Okay. Good morning, everyone. By next week, Rabbi Edry will be here, Be'ezrat Hashem. So today's my last day. We're trying to fill in. So let's get started. Reading this week's Parsha, Parashat Vayigash. It's Tuesday. The rule is that by Tuesday, you can discuss the previous Parasha up until Tuesday. Once Tuesday night hits, it's already Wednesday, and so then you go next week's Parasha. But I think the lessons are too valuable in this week's Parasha to just go on to next week's Parasha. There's always connection. So, just to start off, Yosef finally reveals himself to his brothers, and he tells them, Ani Yosef, I am Yosef. And there's a very exciting reunion, at least for Yosef. The brothers were embarrassed. And I'm sure most of you know the story, how he revealed himself to his brothers. Now comes another episode in the Torah that I don't think has enough attention to it, so I'd like to give it some attention. So the Yosef tells his brothers, when you head back home to your father, to our father Yakov, I want you to bring, he's sending them with agalot. Now, the Psukim discuss that in these agalot, he filled them with there was a lot of food, mazon aderi. He also provided them with some escort. There were some drivers who took these agalot. And the Midrash tells us that these weren't any ordinary or regular agalot. These were agalot that Yosef had to get special permission from Paro. Because back then, they were considered a high level of technology. And so Yosef had to get special permission. So Paro granted him permission to take these agalot back to his father. Now, what's interesting is, the first question I'd like to discuss is, what's the purpose of these agalot, and why is he filling these agalot up with, inside there were simukim, te'enim, tmarim, figs, dates, all these good things, tvu'ah, you had some wheat. He even sent his father aged wine for his father, because the rabbis tell us that aged wine is very good for the elderly. So he made sure to provide his father with aged wine as well. So, what's the point of sending all this? Anyway, they're coming back down. So why are you sending everything right now to Yakov? So that's the first question, and with the brothers. The second question is, when the brothers arrived home and they told Yakov, Yosef is alive, they did a little bit of an introduction. They sent Yaakov's granddaughter, her name is Serah Bat Asher, and she started singing a song saying Yosef is alive, etc., etc., kind of to slowly mitigate and when they want to give the news, so it's not one-shot news, because actually Midrash says that even after they revealed the news, Yaakov actually fainted. The Midrash actually tells us, a few of the commentaries discuss this, that he actually fainted. So they had to kind of do it in slow levels. They have to do it very organically to make sure that Yaakov can handle it, that his heart can actually carry the news. So when they revealed this to Yosef, he didn't believe them that Yosef is alive. Why? Because they weren't exactly truthful. Their track record doesn't prove that they're actually honest people. So he didn't believe them. When did he believe them? When he saw the wagons. What's so special about those wagons, that he saw the wagons? So Yosef tells his brother, when you get home, when you arrive home to Abba, tell him, here are the wagons, and tell him the last thing we learned together before I disappeared was the halakha of Egla Arufa. What's Egla Arufa? That was the siman. See, I'm going to explain what Egla Arufa is in a second, but he told his brother, this is the siman. This is the siman. Tell Abba, the last thing we learned together, I vividly remember, was Egla Arufa. That's how Abba is going to know that I am Yosef and what you're saying is the truth. They told it to him. He didn't believe. When did he believe, the pasuk says? I'll read it to you. וידברו אליו את כל דברי יוסף אשר דיבר אליהם. And then the pasuk continues. So he speaks to them. They speak to him, excuse me. וירא את העגלות אשר שלח יוסף. And then he saw the wagons that Yosef sent. לשאת אותו, to carry him. ותחי רוח יעקב אביהם. And then his spirit was revived. That's when he believed. As soon as he saw the agalot, that's when he believed. So Rashi says over there, it's because they were learning together. Now, so Rashi says something very cryptic. Why did he believe? Because Egla Arufa and Agala, Egla means wagons. I'm sorry, Agalot or Agala means wagon. Egla means a calf, like a baby cow, a calf. So Egla and Agalot, that's how we make the connection. I like your face because it doesn't really make sense. Like, what's the connection between a calf and a wagon? It doesn't seem to have any connection. I promise you, there is a marvelous connection. So, what is the concept of Egla Arufa? In Parashat Shoftim, we learn the following. If there is a person on the road and people are walking on the road and they happen to see a dead body on the road. Now this dead body, let's assume it's between two Jewish cities, and this dead body is lying there, and you have to, obviously when there's a dead body, you have to inquire, you have to see what's going on. What's the halakha of Egla Arufa? Egla Arufa means the following, that now there's a dead body, and what do? We have to measure the distance between two cities. Where is the body closest to? Which city? Is it city A or city B? Let's assume it's city A. Now the dead body is sitting there, and it's closest to city A. The judges, and all the people of the city, and the judges, everybody needs to come down, right? And they have to do this very strange ceremony. What's the ceremony? They have to come down, and they have to bring a small calf, right, a baby calf, and they break the back of the neck of the baby calf, and that's supposed to serve as an atonement for the dead body. Now, I'm going to say this again so there isn't confusion. The judges themselves, when I mean the judges, I mean the biggest people in the city. They don't nominate anybody. They themselves have to come down with the people of the city, and there's a dead body over there, and they take a calf as a form of let's call it a form of sacrifice almost. They break the back of the calf's neck, and they say should be atonement for the body, for the victim. Now, and not only that, they say, Yadenu lo shafku et hadam hazeh. Our hands did not spill this blood. Who is saying this? The judges, the dayanim, the biggest people of the city. Obviously, you guys didn't kill the body, so why are you making this statement? You didn't do anything wrong. So, the Gemara, the Mishnah in Sotah explains the following. Really, why are they making this statement? Because they have some degree of responsibility for the death of this body. Why? When a person leaves a city, we have certain obligations. What are these obligations? We have to make sure that we provide them with food and drink. And we also have to make sure we do mitzvat levaya. We have to escort them. Maimonides writes, this is so critical, that he writes that just like you can impose a community to give charity, if someone is in need, people in the community should, chip in money to help a family in need, so too you can impose the mitzvah of escorting. That's how critical this mitzvah is. In fact, Maimonides also writes something very interesting, that if you guys have guests over for Shabbat, and you have Wagyu steak, the best fish, wine, best drinks, everything, and the table, it looks like the table of kings, and you really did Achnasat Orchim, the highest possible level that you can. The biggest part of Achnasat Orchim is not the food, is when the dinner concludes, or the Achnasat Orchim concludes, you get up with your guest and you walk them all the way to the door, even a few steps outside the door. That is the biggest part of Achnasat Orchim, because it's a feeling of you're walking with them. Because if you could just imagine for a second, someone is getting up and you're just sitting down and they're leaving. They're walking alone outside the home. It's not a good feeling. So by walking with them, you're demonstrating that in a way, there's a sense of sadness that they're leaving. Maybe not always, but at least that's the right thing to do, right? The right thing to do is certainly to walk them outside the door. So the rabbis here, when they make this announcement, they're saying the following: we didn't see that this person that now is found dead, we didn't see that he's left, well, that he wasn't escorted out, and we didn't see that he was left without food. So they're saying that in a way that they're innocent. That's how the rabbis explain the sugya of egla arufa, meaning they're making the statement: we are innocent in the sense that if we would have seen him, we would have escorted him, and and at the very least we would have given him food or something for the way, for the derech. That's according to one form of Talmud. We have Talmud Bavli and Talmud Yerushalmi. That's according to the Gemara that comes from Bavel. We have another Gemara from Yerushalayim, Talmud Yerushalmi. There says something rather very different, but also makes a lot of sense. The calf that we bring down actually is not even intended to atone for the dead body. Who is intended to atone for? It's intended to atone for the murderer, the person who murdered the killer, the slayer, the Rotzeach. Why do we need to atone for him? He did something wrong. He should get his own atonement. We have no responsibility for him. So the explanation is like this. This is how far-reaching the obligation is of the leaders of the city goes. Is that there's two ways to understand this. First way is, how could you let a killer go? Meaning, if city A, the killer was by there, and you guys let him go, you're responsible. Because you can't let criminals on the loose. That's one way to understand it. But there's another way to understand it. Is, let's assume right now, this killer went, or this person went rather, and he was on the road, and a person was walking. Let's say this person that was walking on the road was very fit, very strong person, and very skilled person, and then someone, as a result of poverty, of being poor, decided to rob them, and the guy in self-defense decided to do what? Decided to react, and someone comes to attack, you attack back, and he killed the person who was trying to actually to steal. Now, he acted in self-defense, right? So that's perfectly fine. Now the murdered person, who is really the attacker here, why does he need kapara? Well, because the people of the city did not provide for him. He got to a level where he was so poor, so he had such a high level of poverty that he had to get to a situation where he had to rob. And therefore, the people of the city are responsible. How could you not take care of your people? And even if to say that he actually did kill, and another innocent person died instead, still the same thing applies, because you always have to take care of the people. So according to the Yerushalmi, you have to take care of people so they don't behave in a way that's going to be very extreme and lead to murder and stealing, etc. Now, comes out an incredible thing here. The din of Egla Arufa is what? Is that anytime someone is leaving a city, you have to provide food and escort them. You see, before Yosef disappeared, something very interesting to note, this is how Midrash explains it. Before Yosef disappeared, his father told him, Lech tireh b'shlom achicha, go see how your brothers are doing. So what did he do, Yakov? He walked with him. And the Midrash says he walked with him for a period of time. And then Yosef says, Abba, why are you walking with me up until now? I don't understand. You go back. And that's where he taught him the din of Egla Ufa. No, you have the obligation to escort someone. Comes out incredible. You know why Yaakov's spirit was revived? He didn't believe his sons Yosef alive. But you know why his spirit was revived? When he saw the agalot, when he saw the wagons, you know what he saw? The brothers were leaving Mitzrayim, and they had a long road ahead. He saw Yaakov was actually fulfilling the din of Egla Arufa. He was providing his brothers with food and with escort, just like the halacha of Egla Arufa. So the agalot were a representation that Yosef understood the halacha of Egla Arufa. Meaning, my brothers are traveling, the road could be dangerous, he provided them with food, he provided them with escort. My son Yakov, this is the last thing we learned, that's how the wagons are related to Egla. Because Egla Arufa, although they're spelled the same, there's no real connection there. The connection is that he was able to fulfill the halacha of Egla Arufa. So when he saw the brothers are coming down with all these agalot, all this food and escort, my son fulfilled this halacha. So far clear? That's the connection of, that's the siman. Egla, the calf, we break the calf's neck because someone was not provided for, versus the agalot where he enriched them and filled them with a lot of food. Oh, my son knows that deed. Now, this is quite interesting because there's a rabbi, I saw this yesterday, his name is the Hatam Sofer. The Hatam Sofer, his name is Rabbi Moshe Sofer. He lived in Pressburg, today I think it's Slovakia. And he writes kind of something interesting. A second ago I told you that Yosef was walking with his father before he disappeared. So the message, he says it in a different way. He says it that the message was to his father, like, look, Abba, you escorted me. Which means that since you escorted me, I'm alive. I didn't die. It means you did the right thing. So this is the message he was sending back to his father. That's another way to understand this. I'll tell you a story about the Hatam Sofer, in which we're going to read this in a couple of weeks. It's Parashat Vayigash. So the Hatam Sofer was he was an Aharon. He was born sometime in the mid-18th century. He was a huge rabbi, tremendous amount of influence, many, many disciples. And he says the following story. A man walked into him and told him, Rabbi, this was a very wealthy merchant who was struggling with business tremendously. Sales were declining, things are not going well for him. And he's coming to the Hatam Sofer and he's telling him the following. He's saying, I need you to give me a blessing. I need you to elevate my spirits because my business is down. I don't know what to do. So the Hatam Sofer tells him, V'gam ani shamati. And I also heard something interesting about you. What did he hear? You have a brother who is very poor, has no money, and a big family supports him. But you give him no financial support whatsoever. You don't provide for him anything. And he tells him, the merchant tells him, Rabbi, I just told you I'm struggling financially. And he's crying. And he tells him, let me tell you a pasuk in the Torah. And the pasuk goes, it's Parshat Vayigash, it's in the very beginning. The pasuk says, V'gam ani shamati kna'akat Yisrael. And I also heard the screams of the people. So we all know we were slaves in Mitzrayim. And since we're all slaves in Mitzrayim, for years we're crying and we're screaming. And the pasuk says, V'gam ani shamati. And God says, I also heard the crying of the Jewish people. Now in Hebrew, V'gam and V'et, Bale Rabot, it's coming to include something. If I say Gam ani shamati, if I also heard, it means somebody else heard. Who also heard other than Hashem? So the Hatam Sofer tells them, they heard each other's cries. They felt each other's pain. When they heard each other's cries and felt each other's pain, that's what God heard them. That's what the Hatam Sofer explains. He was giving the message, you want Hashem to hear you, that you're struggling financially? Take care of your brother. Because that's first and foremost the most important thing. Take care of your brother, then God's going to hear you. Don't tell me you're struggling in business. Because we have an obligation, responsibility for one another. There is a very famous saying, Hamitpalel al havero na'ana tehila. And, I was wondering, what's that all about? Why is it that a person, you're going to pray for somebody else, and then you'll be, God is going to heed your praise. He's going to listen to you. Let's assume someone wants a spouse. They want to get married. They want a child. And if there's many things that we want, and it's okay, no problem wanting these things, anything that we want essentially, they come typically from a place where I want something. It's from the capital I, me, I want it. And a lot of times, it can come also from a selfish place. Not necessarily what's best, but from what I want and the way I perceive things. Maybe it's because of the community, maybe it's because there's a concept of keeping up with the Jones, like we have to, if they got it, we got to do it, etc. So a lot of times, we have that drive. And I was thinking, many things that we want ourselves, for Hashem to give it to us, it requires for us to be selfless. Which means, if I'm praying for somebody else on something that I don't have, what am I showing? That even though I don't have it, I wish it for somebody else. Which means, I am no longer selfish. Meaning, I'll be happy if someone else gets it, and I mean it. I'll be happy if someone else gets it even though I don't have it, which means this is a quality of being selfless. Once you achieve that quality, then a person can get a spouse. Then, people who want to be parents can handle a child because it's not about them anymore. It's about the other person. I honestly feel like as a husband, and I say this in the best possible way, I feel like as a husband, you have to be, it's customer service 24/7. It's the reality of it. This is how it is. And you should be happy doing it because this is the mitzvah. It's not about you. It's really not about you. And oftentimes, I work with, late teens and early 20s, and I always give them that message, and I say, you have to understand, it's this whole concept of how do you know if you're ready? Yeah, the minute you know that it's not about you, that you're willing to give up, that's how you know you're ready. And I always try to reinforce that message again and again. It's very interesting because I'm sure some of you know that today is Asara B'Tevet. And Asara B'Tevet is a day in which Nebuchadnezzar, he made a siege in Yerushalayim. And that siege lasted for about 3.5 years. And every year falls obviously on Rosh Chodesh Tevet. And the word Tevet has a meaning which means, it comes from the word Hatava. Now, one way to understand it, I saw, is that Hatava means that because this month has some, let's just say it's not the most favorable of all months. It's not Av, it's not Chodesh Av or Tammuz, but it's really not one of the most favorable months. So we ask Hashem to bestow goodness upon us during this